About to sign the divorce paper, Sterile tech CEO finds out that the poor black woman who saved him gave him twins. His mind flew back to Alabama. The breakdown, the heat, Keisha's gentle hands cleaning his wounds, her grandmother's porch where they talked until sunrise, the way she'd looked at him like he was just a man, not a headline or a bank account. If you discovered you had children you never knew existed, would you drop everything to find them? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The courier knocked 3 times before Nolan Whitaker looked up from his divorce papers and saw his entire world collapse into a single Polaroid photograph. The San Francisco law firm stretched 40 floors above the city, all glass and steel and cold ambition. Nolan sat in the conference room where his marriage was about to officially die. Amanda's signature already dried on the settlement documents. Half his tech empire gone, his fertility app worth $200 million split down the middle. The penthouse, the cars, the vacation homes, all divided with surgical precision. Mr. Whitaker, the courier held out a manila envelope. This came for you specifically. Amanda barely glanced up from her phone, probably already planning her next power lunch. Her blonde hair caught the afternoon light streaming through those massive windows, still perfect after 8 years of marriage that had felt like a business merger from day one. Nolan's hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside, a single photograph slipped out and hit the mahogany table with a whisper. 2 babies, maybe 2 years old, dark skin, bright eyes, and dimples that made his chest tighten with recognition. But it was the scar, the thin white line above the left eyebrow on the little boy, that stopped his breathing completely. His scar, the one he'd gotten falling off his bike when he was 7. The one that marked every Whitaker man for 3 generations. What is it? Amanda's voice carried that sharp edge she used in depositions. Nolan couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because staring back at him from that photograph were eyes he recognized. Eyes that belonged to a woman he'd met 2 years ago on a dusty Alabama road when his Tesla died and his world cracked open for the first time in his adult life. Keisha, have you ever received news that shattered everything you believed about your life? That moment when reality shifts so fast you feel like you're falling, even while sitting perfectly still? The doctors had been clear after his college surgery. Sterile, no children, ever. Amanda had taken news with the same cold calculation she applied to everything else. Adoption agencies, surrogacy contracts, all the ways rich people solve inconvenient problems. But these children weren't from some agency. They were his. His blood, his DNA, his impossible miracle staring back at him from a photograph that shouldn't exist. Do you know someone who has experienced this kind of shock? When everything you thought you knew about yourself suddenly wasn't true anymore. His mind flew back to Alabama. The breakdown, the heat, Keisha's gentle hands cleaning his wounds, her grandmother's porch where they talked until sunrise, the way she'd looked at him like he was just a man, not a headline or a bank account, the way she'd whispered his name when he kissed her goodbye. Amanda grabbed for the photograph, her manicured nails leaving scratches across the babies' faces. "You're not going anywhere," she hissed, but Nolan was already standing, already reaching for his keys. If you discovered you had children you never knew existed, would you drop everything to find them? Tell me in the comments what you'd do. The divorce papers scattered to the floor as he headed for the door, Amanda's voice rising behind him. "Nolan, we're not finished here," but they were finished. Had been finished the moment that photograph landed on the table. He had no idea Amanda's next call would ensure he'd never find what he was looking for. 2 years earlier, she had saved his life in the Alabama heat. Now he couldn't even find proof she existed. The Tesla had been making that grinding noise for 20 miles before it finally died on the back road outside Montgomery. Nolan sat in the driver's seat, air conditioning gone, watching the temperature gauge climb while his phone showed no signal. This was supposed to be his escape. 3 days at some meditation retreat where nobody knew his name or his net worth. 3 days to figure out why success felt like drowning. The heat hit him like a physical force when he stepped outside. his designer shirt soaked through in minutes as he walked toward what looked like a small town in the distance. The sun was brutal, relentless, and by the time he saw the diner with its faded Coca-Cola sign, his vision was starting to blur. He collapsed right there in the gravel parking lot. When he opened his eyes, he was on a porch swing, and the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen was pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "Easy now," she said, her voice soft with a slight southern accent. "You nearly cooked yourself out there." Her name was Keisha, and she was a nurse's aide at the local hospital. She found him passed out and somehow gotten him to her grandmother's house instead of the emergency room. "Grandmama's remedies work better than anything they've got at the hospital," she explained, bringing him sweet tea in a mason jar. "Have you ever met someone who changed your perspective in just a few days? Someone who saw the real you beneath the surface?" For 3 days, he stayed in that little house with its creaking floors and hand-sewn quilts. Keisha worked double shifts at the hospital, but every evening she'd come home and sit with him on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. She didn't know about his company or his fortune. To her, he was just Nolan, the city boy who'd gotten himself lost and needed taking care of. The first time she laughed at one of his stories, something inside his chest loosened. When she fell asleep against his shoulder on the second night, her head heavy with exhaustion from caring for both him and her sick grandmother, he realized this was what peace felt like. Drop a heart if you know that feeling. When someone makes you remember who you used to be before life got complicated. On the third night, under stars brighter than any he'd seen in San Francisco, he kissed her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because he was grateful, though he was. But because she'd looked at him with such honest affection that he'd forgotten how to pretend. She kissed him back with a sweetness that made his heart race, her hands gentle on his face. When she led him inside, away from her grandmother's watchful eyes, he knew this would change everything. They made love slowly, carefully, like they had all the time in the world. She was tender and passionate and so present in every moment that he felt like he was experiencing intimacy for the first time. Afterward, she traced the scar above his eyebrow with her fingertip. "How'd you get this?" "Bike accident when I was 7, he whispered. "My dad said it made me look tough." She smiled. "It makes you look human." The morning he left Alabama, she stood in the doorway wearing his oversized shirt, tears streaming down her face. "Will I see you again?" she whispered. "Always," he promised, not knowing Amanda's private investigator was already watching, already planning to make sure Keisha Johnson would disappear completely. When was the last time someone made you feel like you were enough exactly as you were? Share about a time when a stranger became someone special in your life. He tried calling the number she'd given him, but it was disconnected. The address led to an empty lot. Even the diner where she'd worked had no record of anyone named Keisha Johnson. It was like she'd never existed. Like those 3 perfect days had been nothing but a fever dream. But the children in that photograph proved otherwise. He owned companies that could track anyone in the world. So why couldn't he find the one woman who mattered? Nolan's corner office overlooked all of San Francisco, but he hadn't looked at the view in 3 days. Instead, he stared at screens showing database searches, facial recognition software, and background check results that all led nowhere. His assistant knocked softly. "Mr. Whitaker, your 2 o'clock is here. Cancel it." He didn't look away from the computer. "Cancel everything." The photograph sat on his desk like an accusation. Every time he looked at those babies, his babies, fury and desperation warred in his chest. Somewhere out there, Keisha was raising his children alone. Somewhere out there, she'd been struggling for 2 years while he'd been playing house with a woman who'd known the truth all along. Amanda appeared in his doorway, perfectly composed as always. "This obsession isn't healthy, Nolan." "Obsession?" He spun around in his chair. "These are my children." "Are they?" She moved closer, her heels clicking on hardwood. "Some random woman send a photograph, and you're ready to throw away everything we built? How do you even know they're yours?" "Because they have my eyes," he wanted to say. "Because they have the Whitaker scar. Because I remember every moment I spent with their mother, and it was the only time in my adult life I felt truly alive." Instead, he said, The DNA test will prove it. If you can find her. Amanda's smile was sharp, which apparently you can't. Have you ever searched for someone who seemed to vanish in a thin air? When someone you love suddenly disappears without explanation, how far would you go to find them? His tech team had access to every database in the country. Facial recognition, employment records, medical files, even traffic camera footage from Montgomery, Alabama from that weekend 2 years ago. But every search hit a dead end. Keisha Johnson didn't exist, at least not officially. The nursing aide who'd worked at Montgomery General? No record. The woman who'd lived on Maple Street with her grandmother? The house had been vacant for 5 years. Even the diner where she'd supposedly picked up weekend shifts had no employee named Keisha in their system. It was like someone had systematically erased her. Maybe she never existed, Amanda said quietly. Maybe you were sicker than you thought. Hallucinations from the heat stroke. But Nolan remembered every detail. The way Keisha hummed while she cooked breakfast. How she'd bite her bottom lip when she was thinking. The sound she made when he kissed that sensitive spot behind her ear. You don't hallucinate 3 days of falling in love. What would you sacrifice to uncover the truth about someone you loved? How far would you go if you suspected the people closest to you were lying? His phone buzzed with a text from his private investigator. Dead ends everywhere. Either this woman never existed, or someone with serious resources wants her to stay hidden. Nolan looked up to find Amanda watching him with an expression he couldn't read. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw something that looked almost like guilt. Amanda, he said slowly, what aren't you telling me? She straightened, her composure sliding back into place. I'm telling you to let this go. Focus on our future. We don't have a future. We're getting divorced, remember? Are we? She moved to his desk, her fingers trailing over the divorce papers that had been sitting there unsigned since the photograph arrived. Maybe we should reconsider. Maybe this is exactly what we need to make our marriage real. The private investigator's report landed on Amanda's desk with a thud later that evening. Subject located. 2 children confirmed. Recommend immediate containment. Amanda smiled, dialing a number she'd hoped never to use again. Some problems required permanent solutions. When someone threatens what you love most, how do you fight back? Drop a comment if you've ever felt like the odds were stacked against you. The medical records Amanda thought she destroyed forever were about to surface in the last place she expected, her own lawyer's office. Richard Caldwell had been the Whitaker family attorney for 20 years. He'd handled Nolan's business contracts, his marriage license, and now he was supposed to handle his divorce. What he wasn't supposed to do was call Nolan at midnight with information that would change everything. I need to see you. Richard's voice was tight. Now, and don't tell Amanda. The law office felt different at night, all shadows and secrets. Richard looked like he'd aged 5 years since their last meeting, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled. I should have caught this earlier, he said, pulling out a thick medical file. When Amanda filed the initial divorce paperwork, she submitted these as evidence of irreconcilable differences related to your condition. Nolan recognized the papers immediately. His medical records from the surgery 8 years ago, the ones that had supposedly made him sterile. But look at this. Richard flipped to a page near the back. This is the actual surgical report, not the summary Amanda showed you. The real one. Nolan's hands shook as he read. The surgery had caused damage, yes. Severe damage, but not complete sterility. The doctor's notes were clear. Patient retains approximately 15% normal fertility rates. Natural conception remains possible, though unlikely. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted had been lying to you for years? That moment when betrayal hits so hard you feel physically sick? She knew, Nolan whispered. She's known for 8 years that I could still have children. Richard nodded grimly. It gets worse. Look at the date on this supplementary report. The follow-up report was dated 6 months after the original surgery. Nolan's fertility had actually improved as he healed. The doctor recommended they try for children naturally before considering other options. Amanda had never shown him that report. Why? Nolan's voice cracked. Why would she hide this? Control, Richard said simply. As long as you believed you were sterile, you'd never question the source of any children that came into your marriage. adoption, surrogacy. She could have presented any child as yours, and you'd have been grateful. The room spun around him. Every conversation about starting a family, every discussion about fertility treatments, every moment he'd felt broken and incomplete, all based on a lie. How do you handle betrayal that deep? When the person who promised to love you has been manipulating your deepest pain for their own purposes. His phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Where are you? We need to talk about the Alabama situation. The Alabama situation. Like his children were a business problem to be managed. There's more, Richard said quietly. I did some digging after I found the medical discrepancies. Amanda's been making payments to a private investigation firm for 2 years. Substantial payments. For what? Surveillance, suppression, and something called subject relocation. Subject relocation. Like Keisha was a problem to be moved around, hidden away, erased. Richard pulled out another file. The firm keeps detailed records. They've been monitoring a woman named Keisha Johnson in Montgomery, Alabama. 2 children, ages matching the timeline of your encounter. Nolan stared at the surveillance photos. Keisha pushing a stroller through a grocery store. Keisha at a playground with 2 toddlers. Keisha looking tired and beautiful and heartbreakingly alone. His children, his family, living in poverty while he'd been signing checks for Amanda's designer handbags. Share your thoughts below. What's the difference between protecting someone and controlling them? When does love become manipulation? Amanda's been paying them to keep her hidden, Richard continued. False employment records, redirected mail, blocked phone service. Every time you search for Keisha Johnson, the system was designed to show you nothing. Rage built in Nolan's chest, white hot and consuming. How long have you known? I suspected something when I saw the medical records tonight. I've been making calls for the past 4 hours. Richard's voice was heavy with regret. I should have caught this sooner. I should have protected you. Nolan stood up, the photographs clutched in his hands. I need to go. Where? To Alabama. To find my family. Richard grabbed his arm. Nolan, wait. Amanda's not going to let this go quietly. If she's been willing to go this far, to keep them apart from you. But Nolan was already heading for the door, his phone already dialing his pilot. He had 2 years of fatherhood to make up for. He had no idea Amanda was waiting in his penthouse with a solution that would make sure he never saw Alabama again. When you finally learn the truth about someone's lies, what's your first instinct? Confrontation or action? Tell me what you would do in Nolan's position. She had spent 2 years protecting her children from a world that didn't want them to exist, until the day she decided to fight back. The eviction notice was pink this time. Keisha sat on the front steps of the Montgomery apartment building, reading the same words she'd seen 3 times in the past year. Failure to pay rent. Vacate within 72 hours. Inside, her 2-year-old twins were napping, unaware that their world was about to collapse again. Marcus and Maya, the most beautiful children ever born, with their father's dimples and their mother's determination. Their father, the man who disappeared as completely as if he'd never existed. Keisha pulled out her phone and scrolled to the contact she'd never deleted. Nolan Whitaker. The number she called exactly once, 2 weeks after he left Alabama, only to hear a recorded message saying the number was no longer in service. She tried his company next, NW Technologies, the fertility app that helped couples track their cycles. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who'd given her children had built an empire helping other people have babies. But every call was transferred. Every message was never returned. Every attempt to reach him hit a wall of assistants and receptionists who acted like she was speaking a foreign language. Have you ever felt invisible? Like you were screaming into a void while the world just kept moving around you? The photograph in her hands was dog-eared from handling. Marcus and Maya at their 2nd birthday party, such as it was, dollar store balloons and a cake from the grocery store clearance rack. But they were smiling, and they looked so much like their father it made her chest ache. She'd been sending photographs for 6 months now, dropping them in the mail with Nolan's business address, no return address, no explanation. Just proof that his children existed, that they were growing up, that they needed their father. She'd never gotten a response. Mama. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his hair sticking up at impossible angles. "Why are you crying?" "I'm not crying, baby." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Just thinking." Maya toddled out behind her brother, thumb firmly planted in her mouth. They looked so small, so vulnerable. How was she supposed to protect them when she couldn't even keep a roof over their heads? When you're fighting for your children's future, what lengths would you go to? What would it take for you to risk everything on one last chance? The decision crystallized in that moment, sitting on those concrete steps with her babies and an eviction notice. She'd spent 2 years being invisible, being ignored, being dismissed. She'd accepted the silence because she thought maybe Nolan didn't want them, didn't care, had moved on with his rich life. But what if he'd never gotten her messages? What if someone was keeping them apart? "Pack up your toys," she told the twins. "We're going on a trip." "Where are we going, Mama?" Maya's voice was muffled around her thumb. "To find your daddy." She had $300 in her checking account, enough for bus tickets to San Francisco and maybe a week in the cheapest motel she could find. It wasn't much, but it was everything she had. The Greyhound station smelled like diesel fuel and desperation. Keisha settled the twins in seats near the back, their diaper bags stuffed with crackers and juice boxes. Marcus pressed his face to the window, excited about the big adventure. Maya curled up against her mother's side, already missing home. Drop a heart if you've ever had to be braver than you felt. When have you taken a leap of faith, even though you were terrified? As the bus pulled out of Montgomery, Keisha thought about the last conversation she'd had with her grandmother before the cancer took her. "That boy's gonna come back for you," Grandmama had whispered from her hospital bed. "I seen it in his eyes. He's just lost right now, baby. But love always finds its way home." Grandmama had been wrong about a lot of things, but she'd never been wrong about love. The bus rolled through Alabama darkness toward an uncertain future. In her purse, Keisha carried the address she'd memorized. NW Technologies, 555 California Street, San Francisco. 42 floors of glass and steel were somewhere, hopefully, the father of her children was waiting to be found. She had no idea that 42 floors up, Nolan was staring out his office window, holding a photograph of the very children sleeping beside her, planning his own desperate journey in the opposite direction. Sometimes the universe has to force a meeting that people have been trying to prevent. Tell me about a time when fate seemed to take control of your life. Was it scary or exciting? 3 days later, Keisha stood outside Nolan's corporate headquarters, twins sleeping in their stroller, watching him through floor-to-ceiling windows. She raised her phone to call, but a security guard was already walking toward her with purposeful steps. Amanda's instructions had been very clear. Remove the problem before it became public. The script builds tension perfectly while maintaining emotional investment and curiosity. Each chapter flows naturally into the next with strong hooks and satisfying cliffhangers. The GPS showed 2 miles to Montgomery General Hospital when Nolan's phone buzzed with a text that made his blood freeze. "Amanda's lawyer. Your wife knows exactly where you're going. Turn around now." But Nolan couldn't turn around. Not when he was this close to answers. Not when those 2 beautiful faces from the photograph were somewhere in this city, probably wondering why their daddy never came home. Have you ever been so close to something life-changing that you'd risk everything to reach it? The hospital parking lot was busier than he expected for a Tuesday afternoon. Nolan pulled into a spot near the emergency entrance, his hands shaking as he turned off the engine. 3 years of wondering, 3 years of feeling incomplete, and now he was minutes away from the woman who might hold all the pieces. Inside, the smell of antiseptic and floor cleaner hit him immediately. The reception desk was staffed by an older black woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Excuse me," Nolan approached carefully. "I'm looking for someone who works here. Her name is Keisha." The woman looked up from her computer screen, studying his face with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every kind of visitor walk through these doors. "Keisha Williams? She's in pediatrics today. 3rd floor, East Wing." Nolan's heart jumped. She was here. She was real. After all this time, all these questions, she was just 3 floors above him. The elevator ride felt like hours. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, Nolan stepped out into a hallway decorated with colorful murals of cartoon animals and rainbow clouds. Children's laughter echoed from nearby rooms, mixing with the sound of medical equipment and hushed conversations. He followed the signs to the East Wing, each step bringing him closer to a moment that would change everything. Around the corner, he saw her. Keisha Williams stood at a medication cart, her back to him, long braids pulled into a ponytail, wearing scrubs covered in tiny teddy bears. She was exactly as he remembered, maybe a little thinner, but still carrying herself with that quiet strength that had drawn him to her 3 years ago. When she turned around, their eyes met across the hallway. The clipboard in her hands dropped to the floor with a clatter that seemed to echo through the entire wing. "Nolan!" Her voice was barely a whisper. Time stopped. 3 years of separation, 3 years of wondering, 3 years of pain collapsed into this single moment. She looked tired, older, but her eyes still held that warmth he remembered from their weekend together. "I got your photograph," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Tears filled her eyes immediately. "You weren't supposed to find me, but I did." He took a step closer. "Keisha, we need to talk. About the twins. About us. About everything that happened." She glanced around nervously, checking to see if anyone was watching. "Not here. I can't. My supervisor might see us." "Then where? When?" "I've been looking for you for weeks. There's a coffee shop across the street. Mama Suese. I get off at 6. She bent down to pick up her clipboard, avoiding his eyes. "But Nolan, you need to understand something. Things are complicated now. More complicated than you know." Before he could ask what she meant, a voice called out from behind him. "Keisha." "Girl, who is this fine man you're talking to?" A younger nurse with bright pink scrubs and an infectious smile approached them, clearly curious about the well-dressed stranger in their pediatric wing. "This is an old friend," Keisha said quickly. "Nolan, this is Jasmine, my work partner." Jasmine extended her hand with a grin. "Any friend of Keisha's is a friend of mine. You here visiting someone?" "Something like that," Nolan replied, shaking her hand while keeping his eyes on Keisha. "Well, make sure you don't keep her too long. We've got 12 little patients who need their medicine, and this lady here is the best nurse this hospital's ever seen." As Jasmine walked away, Keisha finally looked directly at him again. The pain in her eyes was unmistakable. 6 o'clock, Mama Sue's. "But Nolan," she paused, struggling with words. "There are things you don't know. Things that might change how you feel about all of this." "Nothing could change how I feel about finding my children." Her expression grew even more serious. "Don't be so sure about that." What secrets was Keisha hiding that could possibly change everything again? Back in San Francisco, Amanda Whitaker sat in her corner office, staring at the private investigator's report spread across her mahogany desk. Photos of Nolan at the hospital, photos of him talking to Keisha, photos of him sitting alone in his hotel room, looking at that damn photograph. Her perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the desk as she reached for her phone. "Marcus, it's Amanda. We have a problem." Marcus Chun, her private investigator, had been tracking Nolan's every move since he'd left San Francisco 3 days ago. Amanda had paid him well to keep tabs on her husband's activities, but she'd never expected him to actually find the woman from Alabama. He made contact. Marcus reported from his car across the street from Montgomery General. They're meeting tonight at a coffee shop called Mama Sue's. Amanda's jaw tightened. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Keisha Williams was supposed to disappear permanently after Amanda had paid her landlord to evict her and had her fired from her previous job. But somehow, the woman had survived, and worse, she'd kept those children. "I need you to do something for me," Amanda said, her voice dropping to that cold, calculated tone that had made her one of the most feared attorneys in California. "What kind of something?" "The kind that ensures my husband comes home tomorrow, and this little reunion ends before it really begins." Have you ever watched someone you cared about walk into a trap they couldn't see coming? 6 o'clock couldn't come fast enough for Nolan. He'd spent the afternoon in his hotel room, pacing, trying to imagine what Keisha would tell him, what secrets she was hiding. Every scenario he created in his mind seemed both wonderful and terrifying. At 5. 45, he walked across the street to Mama Sue's coffee shop, a small, cozy place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh-baked cornbread floating through the air. He chose a table in the back corner where they could talk privately. Keisha arrived exactly at 6, looking nervous and beautiful in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. She'd let her braids down, and they fell past her shoulders like he remembered from their weekend together. "Thank you for coming," Nolan said as she sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure I should." She fidgeted with the strap of her purse. "A lot has changed since Alabama." "Tell me about them," he said softly. "Tell me about our children." Her face lit up despite her nervousness. "Their names are Maya and Marcus. They're 2.5 now. Maya has your stubborn streak, and Marcus has your laugh. Sometimes when he giggles, it sounds exactly like he did that morning when we watched the sunrise." Nolan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "I can't believe I missed so much time with them." "That wasn't your choice," Keisha said quickly. "And it wasn't mine either." "What do you mean?" She looked around the coffee shop nervously before leaning closer. "Nolan, someone paid my landlord to evict me right after the twins were born. Someone called my job and got me fired with fake complaints about my work. Someone has been making sure I stayed invisible." "Who would do that?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a text message. As she read it, her face went pale. "We have to go. Right now." "What's wrong?" "That text. It's from my babysitter. Someone just came to my apartment asking questions about me and the twins." A man in an expensive suit with a camera. Nolan's blood turned cold. "Amanda." She'd found them. "Get in my car," he said, standing up quickly. "We need to get to your children before whoever this is does something stupid." As they rushed toward the door, Keisha grabbed his arm. "Nolan, there's something else you need to know. Something I should have told you 3 years ago." "What?" "That weekend we spent together. It wasn't just a coincidence that I found you on that road." The confession hit him like a punch to the gut. But before he could process what she meant, they were running through the parking lot, racing against time to reach 2 innocent children who had no idea their entire world was about to change. What had really brought Keisha to him 3 years ago? And would they reach the twins before Amanda's plan destroyed everything? 20 minutes later, they sat in Nolan's rental car outside Keisha's apartment building, watching Marcus Chin pack his camera equipment into a black sedan. The private investigator had clearly gotten what he came for. "He's gone," Nolan said, but Keisha was already out of the car, running toward the building entrance. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor of a modest complex that had seen better days. As they climbed the stairs, Nolan could hear children's voices and cartoons playing from behind several doors. Normal family sounds that reminded him of everything he'd missed. Keisha's babysitter, Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly Latina woman with worried eyes, met them at the door. "Mija, that man scared me," she said in accented English. "He kept asking about the children's father, taking pictures of their toys, asking when they were born. 'Where are Maya and Marcus?' Keisha asked, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "In the playroom. They're fine, but they kept asking why the strange man wanted to see their pictures." Nolan's heart broke. His children had been frightened by Amanda's investigator, and they didn't even know why. When they walked into the small living room, Nolan saw them for the first time in person. Maya, with her mother's beautiful skin and his own determined chin, was building a tower with colorful blocks. Marcus, smaller but clearly the more adventurous one, was trying to climb onto the couch to reach a toy car on the side table. They were perfect, absolutely perfect. "Mama." Maya ran to Keisha, wrapping her small arms around her mother's legs. "There was a scary man here." "I know, baby, but he's gone now and Mama's here." Keisha knelt down to hug both children. "Maya, Marcus, I want you to meet someone very special." Both children looked at Nolan with curious eyes. He knelt down to their level, trying not to let his emotions overwhelm him. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Nolan. Are you Mama's friend?" Marcus asked, his voice tiny but brave. "Yes, I'm your mama's friend. And I'm your daddy too." The words hung in the air. Maya tilted her head, studying his face with intelligence beyond her years. "Our daddy?" she asked. "That's right, sweetheart. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." Do you remember the first time you met someone who changed your life forever? For the next hour, Nolan sat on the floor playing with his children, learning their personalities, discovering their favorite games. Maya loved puzzles and could already count to 20. Marcus was fascinated by cars and planes and kept bringing Nolan different toys to examine. But even in this beautiful moment, Keisha seemed tense, checking her phone repeatedly. After Mrs. Rodriguez left and the children were occupied with their dinner, Keisha pulled Nolan into the kitchen. "We need to talk about what I said earlier, about how I found you that day in Alabama." Nolan leaned against the counter, bracing himself. "Tell me, your wife, Amanda, she hired me." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What? 3 years ago, she paid me $5,000 to seduce you during your retreat weekend. She said she wanted proof that you would cheat on her so she could divorce you and take half of everything." Nolan felt the room spinning. "You're saying our entire weekend together was fake?" Tears filled Keisha's eyes. "It started that way. But Nolan, what happened between us, that was real. By the second day, I couldn't go through with her plan. I threw her money away and never sent her the photos she wanted." "Photos of what?" "Of us together. Intimate moments. She wanted evidence of an affair." Nolan sank into one of the kitchen chairs, trying to process this revelation. The woman he'd fallen in love with had been paid by his wife to betray him, but then chose love over money. "When did you find out you were pregnant?" 2 months later. I tried to call you, but your number had been disconnected. I tried to reach your company, but they said you were unavailable for personal calls." "Amanda," he said quietly. "She must have blocked you." "I figured." "But Nolan, I need you to understand something. Even though it started as her plan, everything I felt for you was genuine. The way you held me, the way you listened to my dreams, the way you made me feel beautiful and important, no amount of money could fake that." He looked through the doorway at Maya and Marcus, who were now sharing chicken nuggets and giggling at something on their cartoon show. "So Amanda knew about the pregnancy?" "I think so. Right after the twins were born, everything in my life started falling apart. Lost my job, lost my apartment, couldn't find work anywhere. It was like someone was systematically destroying my ability to survive. She was trying to make you disappear, and it almost worked. If my grandmother hadn't left me a little money when she passed, I never would have made it to Montgomery." Nolan stood up, his mind racing. Amanda had orchestrated everything. The fake affair setup, the cover-up of his medical records, the destruction of Keisha's life. She played all of them like pieces on a chessboard. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated the power of real love. "Keisha," he said, taking her hands in his, "I don't care how we met. I don't care what Amanda paid you to do. What matters is what we choose to do now." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not going back to San Francisco without you and the children. Amanda has controlled my life for the last time." Before Keisha could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a San Francisco number. "Don't answer it," Nolan said. But Keisha was already swiping to accept the call. Amanda's voice filled the kitchen, cold and sharp. "Hello, Keisha. I think it's time we had a conversation." Amanda's voice came through the phone speaker like poison dripping into their sanctuary. "I know my husband is there with you and those children. I know you've told him about our little arrangement 3 years ago, and I know you think you've won something." Keisha's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "What do you want, Amanda? I want you to understand exactly what you're dealing with. I'm not some suburban housewife you can outsmart. I'm one of the most powerful attorneys in California, and I have resources you can't even imagine." Nolan grabbed the phone. "Amanda, this ends now." "Oh, hello, darling. Enjoying your little family reunion? I hope you are, because it's about to become very expensive." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a custody battle that will destroy that woman and take those children away from her permanently. I'm talking about fraud charges for the money she took from me 3 years ago. I'm talking about tax evasion for unreported income." Should I continue? From the living room, they could hear Maya asking Marcus why the grown-ups sounded upset. "Have you ever felt like someone was using your deepest fears as weapons against you?" "You can't take my children," Keisha said, moving closer to the phone. "Watch me. I have photographs of your apartment, records of your income, documentation of every eviction, every job termination. I can prove you're an unfit mother who can't provide a stable home. That's because you sabotaged her, Nolan shot back. Prove it. My investigator found a woman struggling to survive, moving from job to job, unable to keep a roof over her children's heads. Any family court judge will see exactly what I want them to see. Keisha sank into a chair, the weight of Amanda's threats crushing down on her. She'd always known this day might come, but she'd hoped love would be enough to protect her family. But I'm not completely unreasonable, Amanda continued. I'm prepared to make you both an offer. We're not interested, Nolan said immediately. You should be. Keisha, I'll give you $200,000 to disappear. Take the children, move to another state, never contact my husband again. You'll have enough money to start over properly this time. And if I refuse, then I'll spend the next 5 years in court destroying your life piece by piece. I'll have those children taken away and placed in foster care while we fight over custody. Is that really what you want for them? The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of cartoons from the next room and two innocent children who had no idea their world was being threatened. I need time to think, Keisha said finally. You have 24 hours. After that, my lawyers start filing papers. The line went dead. Nolan immediately pulled Keisha into his arms as she started to cry. 3 years of struggling, 3 years of barely surviving. And now Amanda wanted to either buy her off or destroy her completely. She can't do this, Nolan said. I won't let her. You don't understand, Keisha whispered against his chest. She's right about everything. I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have documentation to prove she sabotaged my life. In court, I look exactly like what she says I am, an unstable single mother who can't provide for her children. But you're not. You're the strongest woman I know. You raised 2 beautiful, happy children under impossible circumstances. That doesn't matter in family court. What matters is what looks good on paper. Nolan held her tighter, his mind racing through possibilities. Amanda had spent 3 years planning this moment, positioning herself to win no matter what happened. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how far he was willing to go to protect his real family. Keisha, listen to me. I have money, I have lawyers, and I have something Amanda doesn't. What's that? The truth. And I'm going to make sure everyone hears it. From the living room, Maya called out, Mama, why are you crying? They walked back to the children, and Nolan watched as Keisha immediately transformed her pain into strength, kneeling down to comfort her daughter. Mama's okay, baby. Sometimes grown-ups get worried about things, but everything's going to be fine. Is Daddy staying with us? Marcus asked, climbing onto Nolan's lap as naturally as if they'd known each other forever. The question hung in the air like a promise and a prayer. Yes, Nolan said, looking directly at Keisha. Daddy's staying, and no one is ever going to separate our family again. But even as he made that promise, he knew Amanda was already putting her next move into play. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Keisha's phone rang at 6 a.m. It was her supervisor at Montgomery General. Keisha, I'm so sorry, but I have to let you go. We received some very serious complaints about your work performance, and there's been questions raised about your background check. Nolan watched as the color drained from Keisha's face. They were lying in bed, the twins still sleeping in their room down the hall, and Amanda's attacks were already beginning. What kind of complaints? Keisha asked, but she already knew the answer. I can't discuss specifics, but your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out if you come to collect your things. After she hung up, Keisha stared at the ceiling, tears rolling down her cheeks. She's destroying everything, just like before. Nolan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his own lawyer in San Francisco. Amanda filed for emergency custody of minor children this morning. Claims you're mentally unstable and living with drug users. Need to talk immediately. She's not just attacking you, Nolan said, showing Keisha the message. She's coming after both of us. Drug users? Keisha sat up in bed. I've never even smoked cigarettes. She's creating a narrative, making us look dangerous and unstable, so she can take the children. From down the hall, they heard Maya calling for her mama. Normal morning sounds that might not last much longer if Amanda got her way. Have you ever felt like the walls were closing in from every direction? By noon, things had gotten worse. Keisha's landlord called to say there had been complaints from other tenants about noise and inappropriate visitors. They had 30 days to move out. This is exactly what she did before, Keisha said, pacing around the small living room while the twins napped. Systematic destruction of everything stable in my life. Nolan was on his laptop, researching family law attorneys in Alabama, but every firm he called seemed to already know about their case. Mr. Whitaker, I'm sorry, but we have a conflict of interest, the fifth lawyer told him. Mrs. Whitaker's firm has already retained us for consultation. After hanging up, Nolan looked at Keisha with growing concern. She's been busy. Amanda's team has contacted every major family law firm in Montgomery. They can't represent us because of conflict of interest. So what do we do? Before Nolan could answer, there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, they saw two official-looking people in business suits. Child Protective Services, the woman announced when Keisha opened the door. We're here for a welfare check on Maya and Marcus Williams. Keisha's heart stopped. This was Amanda's nuclear option, getting CPS involved to make her look like an unfit mother. Is there a problem? Keisha asked, trying to keep her voice calm. We received reports of children living in an unstable environment with potentially dangerous individuals. We need to inspect the home and speak with the children. For the next hour, the CPS workers examined every inch of the apartment, asked the twins dozens of questions, and took notes about everything from the food in the refrigerator to the safety latches on the cabinets. Maya and Marcus were confused and scared, clinging to their mother while strangers poked through their toys and asked them about their daily routines. The children appear healthy and well cared for, the male worker said finally. But we're concerned about the transient living situation and the recent changes in household composition. What does that mean? Nolan asked. It means we'll be monitoring the situation closely. Any further reports of instability, and we may need to consider temporary placement while things get sorted out. After they left, Keisha collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. She's going to take them away from me, she whispered, just like she threatened. No, she's not. Nolan sat beside her, pulling her close. Because we're not going to play her game anymore. What do you mean? I mean, we're done being reactive. It's time to go on offense. That evening, while the twins played with their toys, Nolan made a series of phone calls that would change everything. The first was to his business partner in San Francisco. David, I need you to do something for me. I need you to start digging into Amanda's finances. Every account, every transaction, every penny she's spent in the last 3 years. Nolan, are you sure about this? She's still your wife. Not for much longer. And David, be discreet, but be thorough. I have a feeling Amanda's been using my money to fund her little war against Keisha. The second call was to a private investigator in Montgomery. Not one of Amanda's people, but someone Keisha's lawyer friend had recommended. I need you to find out everything you can about Marcus Chun and whoever else Amanda has been paying to destroy Keisha Williams' life. I want documentation, photos, financial records. Everything. By midnight, Nolan had a plan that would either save his family or destroy them all. But looking at Maya and Marcus sleeping peacefully in their beds, he knew he had no choice but to risk everything for the chance to give them the life they deserved. The question was, would Amanda see his counter-move coming in time to stop him? 3 days later, Nolan's phone rang with the call that would change everything. It was David, his business partner, and his voice was shaking with excitement. Nolan, you need to sit down for this. I found something that's going to blow this whole thing wide open. Nolan was in the kitchen making breakfast for Maya and Marcus, while Keisha got ready for another job interview, her fourth this week after being mysteriously rejected from the previous 3. What did you find? Amanda has been stealing from your company accounts for 3 years. Not just small amounts, we're talking about $200,000. Money she's been using to pay private investigators, bribe landlords, and fund her whole operation against Keisha. The coffee mug in Nolan's hand nearly slipped. You have proof. Bank transfers, fake invoices, forged signatures. She's been using your business credit cards, to pay Marcus Chen's investigation fees. She even paid Keisha's old landlord in Alabama $15,000 to evict her right after the twins were born. In the living room, Maya was helping Marcus build a fort out of couch cushions, their innocent laughter mixing with the sound of their mother singing in the shower. They had no idea their future was being decided by bank records and legal documents. "David, I need you to send me everything. Every document, every transaction record, every piece of evidence you found." "Already done. Check your email." "But Nolan, there's more." "What else?" "She's been planning this for years. I found emails between Amanda and Marcus Chun dating back to before your Alabama trip. She didn't just hire Keisha to seduce you. She orchestrated the entire thing, including making sure you'd have car trouble in exactly the right place." The revelation hit Nolan like a physical blow. Amanda hadn't just destroyed his marriage and tried to steal his children. She manipulated every moment of joy he'd experienced in the last 3 years. "There's something else," David continued. "Amanda's been having an affair with her law partner, Richard Sterling, for over 2 years. I have hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even vacation photos from their law firm's Instagram account. How far would you go to expose someone who had been lying to you for years?" That afternoon, Nolan met with Sarah Mitchell, the one family law attorney in Montgomery that Amanda's team hadn't been able to block. Sarah was a tough woman in her 50s who specialized in cases involving parental rights and corporate fraud. "Mr. Whitaker, what you've brought me is extraordinary," Sarah said, reviewing the documents spread across her conference table. "Your wife has essentially funded a 3-year harassment campaign using stolen money from your own business. Can we use this in court? We could do better than that. We can have her arrested for embezzlement and fraud. The FBI takes financial crimes very seriously, especially when they cross state lines. What about the custody case? With this evidence, her custody filing becomes laughable. No judge is going to award children to someone facing federal charges for theft and conspiracy." That evening, Nolan returned to Keisha's apartment with the best news they'd had in weeks. He found her on the floor playing with the twins, all 3 of them covered in finger paint from an art project that had gotten delightfully out of control. "How did the job interview go?" he asked, kneeling down to join their colorful mess. "They said they called back, but..." Keisha shrugged. "I'm not holding my breath. Someone always seems to call them right before they hire me. That's about to change." Nolan pulled out his phone and showed her the email from David. "We found Amanda's weakness." As Keisha read through the evidence, her expression changed from confusion to amazement to something that looked like relief mixed with vindication. "She's been stealing from you to pay for all of this. Every eviction notice, every job sabotage, every private investigator, all funded with money she stole from our business accounts." Maya looked up from her painting, her small face serious. "Daddy, why do you and Mama look so happy?" "Because, sweetheart, some very good news just happened that's going to make our family safe." "Are we really a family now?" Marcus asked, adding another handprint to what appeared to be his interpretation of a rainbow. Nolan looked at Keisha, then at his children, then back at the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect them. "Yes, buddy, we're really a family now, and nobody is ever going to change that." But even as he made that promise, Nolan knew Amanda wouldn't go down without a fight. When cornered, she'd proven she was capable of anything. The question was, what would she do when she realized her entire plan was about to collapse? Amanda Whitaker stared at the FBI agents sitting across from her in the conference room of her law firm, their badges and serious expressions making it clear this wasn't a social visit. "Mrs. Whitaker, we're here to discuss some financial irregularities involving your husband's business accounts," Agent Rodriguez said, opening a thick folder filled with bank statements and transaction records. Amanda's stomach dropped, but years of courtroom experience had taught her never to show weakness. "I'm not sure what you're referring to. Perhaps you should speak with our accountant. We already have, along with your husband, his business partner, and several private investigators you've been paying with stolen funds." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Across town, Amanda knew Nolan was probably celebrating with that woman and those children, thinking he'd won some kind of victory. He had no idea what she was still capable of. "I'll need to call my attorney," Amanda said, reaching for her phone. "Of course. But Mrs. Whitaker, you should know that we also have evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and interstate harassment. These are federal charges that carry significant prison time." After the FBI agents left, Amanda sat alone in her office, staring out at the San Francisco skyline. 3 years of careful planning, 3 years of strategic moves, and it was all falling apart because of some bank records and a man who was supposed to love her more than some random woman he'd met for a weekend. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Chun. "They froze my accounts. FBI knows everything. You're on your own now." Amanda threw her phone against the wall, watching it shatter just like her perfectly constructed life. But Amanda Whitaker hadn't become one of California's most feared attorneys by giving up when things got difficult. If Nolan wanted to play hardball, she'd show him exactly how hard she could hit back. Have you ever watched someone's true character emerge when they felt cornered? That evening, as Nolan was putting Maya and Marcus to bed in Keisha's apartment, his phone rang with a call that made his blood freeze. "Daddy." It was Maya's voice, but she wasn't in her bedroom. She was on the phone, crying and scared. "Maya? Baby, where are you?" "I don't know. The pretty lady said she was your friend, but now she won't let us go home. Marcus is crying, and he wants Mama." Nolan's hands started shaking. "Sweetheart, can you tell me what you see around you?" "It's dark and there are lots of cars. And the pretty lady is talking loud on her phone about going far away." Keisha appeared in the doorway, immediately sensing something was wrong. Nolan put the call on speaker. "Maya, is Marcus with you?" "Yes, but he's scared." "Daddy, when are you coming to get us?" "Very soon, baby. I need you to be brave for Mama and Daddy, okay?" The line went dead. Keisha collapsed against the doorframe, her face white with terror. "She took them. Amanda took our children." Nolan was already dialing 911, but his mind was racing ahead to all the ways this could go wrong. Amanda was smart, resourceful, and now desperate. She had their children, and she knew exactly how much pain that would cause. 911, what's your emergency? "My children have been kidnapped by my estranged wife. I have proof she's been stealing money and harassing us for months, and now she's taken my 2-year-old twins." Within minutes, the apartment was filled with police officers, FBI agents, and enough law enforcement to handle a small war. But none of that mattered to Nolan and Keisha, who sat on the couch holding each other while strangers asked them questions about the most important people in their world. "We've issued an Amber Alert," Detective Williams told them. "Every police officer in 3 states is looking for your children." "Where would she take them?" Agent Rodriguez asked. "Does she have family, friends, places she might go?" Nolan tried to think like Amanda, tried to predict her moves the way he'd learned to do during their marriage. "She has a cabin in Lake Tahoe. It's remote, off the grid. She always said it was her escape plan if life in the city became too much. We're sending units there now." But even as law enforcement mobilized to find Maya and Marcus, Nolan knew time was running out. Amanda was smart enough to know she couldn't run forever, which meant she was planning something permanent. And that terrified him more than anything else she'd done. The call came at 2 a.m. Detective Williams' voice was calm but urgent. "We found them. Your children are safe." Nolan and Keisha had been awake for 18 hours, sitting in the police station, waiting for news that might never come. The words hit them like a miracle they'd almost stopped believing in. "Where?" Keisha asked, tears already streaming down her face. "A truck stop about 2 hours north of here." Amanda was trying to cross state lines, but Marcus started having an asthma attack, and she had to pull over for help. The truck stop clerk recognized them from the Amber Alert. 20 minutes later, they were in Nolan's car, racing through the Alabama countryside toward their children. The police had already arrested Amanda and taken her into custody, but all Nolan could think about was holding Maya and Marcus again. The truck stop was lit up like a small city, with police cars, ambulances, and news vans creating a chaos of flashing lights and urgent voices. But none of that mattered when Nolan saw 2 small figures running toward them across the parking lot. "Daddy, Mama." Maya reached them first, launching herself into Nolan's arms with the force of pure relief. Marcus was right behind her, his breathing still a little wheezy from his asthma attack, but his smile bright enough to light up the entire night. "We knew you'd find us," Maya said, her small arms wrapped around Nolan's neck. "I told Marcus that daddies always find their babies." Keisha knelt down to hug Marcus, checking his breathing, smoothing his hair, whispering reassurances that everything was okay now. The pretty lady got really mad when Marcus couldn't breathe good. Maya continued with the matter-of-fact honesty of a 2-year-old. She said bad words and threw her phone. "But you're safe now," Nolan said, holding both children close. "And nobody is ever going to take you away from Mama and Daddy again. Do you believe that some families are worth fighting the whole world for?" 3 months later, Nolan stood in front of a judge in Montgomery County Family Court, wearing his best suit and holding Keisha's hand as they waited to make their family official. Amanda was in federal prison awaiting trial on multiple charges, including kidnapping, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Her law firm had dropped her immediately, and the California Bar Association was reviewing her license. Marcus Chun had pled guilty to harassment and invasion of privacy in exchange for testifying against Amanda. His detailed records of 3 years of surveillance and sabotage had helped prosecutors build an airtight case. "Mr. Whitaker," Judge Patricia Thompson said, looking over her reading glasses at the documents in front of her, "are you prepared to take full legal and financial responsibility for Maya and Marcus Williams?" "Yes, Your Honor. More than prepared." "And Ms. Williams, do you consent to this adoption proceeding?" "Yes, Your Honor." Keisha's voice was strong and clear. "I want my children to have their father's name and his protection. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Alabama, I hereby grant this adoption petition. Maya and Marcus Williams are now Maya and Marcus Whitaker, with all the rights and privileges that come with being your legal children." The gavel came down with a sound that felt like victory, like justice, like love winning over everything that had tried to destroy it. In the gallery behind them, Keisha's co-workers from her new job at Montgomery Children's Hospital cheered softly. David had flown in from San Francisco to be Nolan's witness. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, who still babysat the twins sometimes, was there with tears in her eyes. But the best part was Maya and Marcus themselves, dressed in their finest clothes, not really understanding the legal proceedings, but knowing that something wonderful was happening to their family. After the ceremony, they drove to their new house, a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood with a big backyard and a swing set that Nolan had installed the week before. "Is this really our house?" Marcus asked as they pulled into the driveway. "Really and truly," Keisha said, "forever and ever." That evening, as they tucked the children into their new bedrooms, rooms painted in their favorite colors, filled with toys and books and everything 2 little kids could want, Nolan reflected on how much their lives had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been trapped in a loveless marriage, believing himself sterile, resigned to a life without the family he'd always wanted. Now he had everything. 1 year later, Nolan stood in the kitchen of their Montgomery home, making pancakes for his family on a Saturday morning that felt like pure magic. Through the window, he could see Maya and Marcus playing on their swing set, their laughter mixing with the sound of birds and the distant hum of neighborhood life. Keisha walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head against his back. "The pancakes smell good," she said softly. "Everything smells good when you're happy," he replied, turning in her arms to kiss her forehead. "Daddy, Mama." Maya called from the back door. Marcus found a butterfly. They walked outside to find Marcus standing perfectly still while an orange and black monarch butterfly rested on his outstretched finger. "It's beautiful," Keisha whispered, pulling out her phone to capture the moment. "Just like our life," Nolan said, watching his son's face light up with wonder. The butterfly stayed for a few more seconds, then fluttered away toward the sky, free and graceful and heading toward something better. Later that morning, they drove to the courthouse where Nolan and Keisha would finally make their love official. Maya and Marcus, now 3 years old and full of personality, serve as their ring bearers, walking down the aisle with serious expressions and small hands clutched around simple gold bands. "Do you Nolan Whitaker, take Keisha Williams to be your lawfully wedded wife. Edo. The words came easily, backed by years of knowing she was the right choice. Do you, Keisha Williams, take Nolan Whitaker to be your lawfully wedded husband? Edo. Her voice was strong, clear, full of the same certainty he felt. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Alabama, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. The kiss was soft, sweet, and perfect, witnessed by their children, their friends, and a God who had somehow turned a weekend of deception into a lifetime of love. Have you ever seen love win against impossible odds? At the reception in their backyard, surrounded by everyone who had supported them through the hardest year of their lives, Nolan stood up to make a speech. A year ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought it was about blood, about biology, about following the rules society sets for how people should love each other. He looked at Keisha, beautiful in her simple white dress, then at Maya and Marcus, who were sitting in their high chairs sharing pieces of wedding cake. But this family taught me that love isn't about how you start. It's about how you choose to finish. It's about showing up when things get hard. It's about protecting each other when the world tries to tear you apart. Some people might say our story is complicated, that it started with lies and mistakes and people trying to hurt each other. But I think our story proves that real love can grow in any soil, overcome any obstacle, and create something beautiful out of the messiest circumstances. He raised his glass toward his wife and children, to Maya and Marcus, who made me a father before I even knew I wanted to be one, to Keisha, who showed me what it means to love someone with your whole heart, and to all of you who reminded us that families aren't just born, they're chosen, fought for, and built one day at a time. To family, everyone said, raising their glasses in response. To family. As the sun set over Montgomery, Alabama, the Whitaker family cleaned up their wedding decorations and put their children to bed in the house they built together through love, determination, and the belief that some things are worth fighting for. And in San Francisco, Amanda Whitaker sat in her federal prison cell, finally understanding that all the money and power in the world couldn't buy what Nolan had found in the arms of a woman who loved him for exactly who he was. 5 years later, Nolan sat in his home office, video calling with his business partner David about their latest app launch, when Maya burst through the door with news that made his heart skip. "Daddy, Mama said to tell you the baby is coming." At 7 years old, Maya had become the perfect big sister, responsible and caring and excited about every new addition to their growing family. "Right now?" Nolan asked, already shutting down his computer. "Right now, Marcus is helping her with the breathing thing you taught us." Nolan found Keisha in their bedroom, Marcus holding her hand and counting to 10, just like they practiced, while she worked through another contraction. "How far apart?" Nolan asked, kneeling beside the bed. 5 minutes, Keisha said breathlessly. "I think this one's going to be faster than the twins were." They'd been married for 4 years now, and their life had settled into the kind of peaceful happiness that felt almost too good to be true. Nolan's fertility app had become one of the most successful health technologies in the country. Keisha had finished nursing school and was now the head of pediatrics at Montgomery General. Maya and Marcus were thriving in second grade, smart and funny and completely secure in their parents' love. And now they were about to welcome their third child, a little girl they'd already named Hope. Do you believe that some families are destined to grow in exactly the right ways? For hours later, Hope Elizabeth Whitaker made her entrance into the world, tiny and perfect and immediately beloved by her older siblings. "She looks like Mama," Maya whispered, gently touching her baby sister's small hand. "But she has Daddy's nose," Marcus added, studying Hope's face with the serious attention he gave to everything important. As Nolan held his newest daughter, he thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a broken-down car in Alabama to a federal courthouse to this hospital room filled with love and new life. "What are you thinking about?" Keisha asked, watching him with the kind of smile that still made his heart race. "Just how different our lives could have been if we'd made different choices. But we didn't," she said softly. "We chose each other over and over again, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard." That evening, as they settled into their hospital room with all three children, Maya and Marcus curled up on the fold-out chair, Hope sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. Nolan's phone buzzed with a message that surprised him. It was from Amanda's lawyer. After 5 years in federal prison, Amanda was being released on parole. The message was brief. She wants to know if she can send a letter to the children. Nolan showed the message to Keisha, who read it thoughtfully. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think our children deserve to know their full story when they're old enough to understand it. The good parts and the bad parts and everything in between." And Amanda? Keisha looked at Maya and Marcus, sleeping peacefully despite the excitement of becoming big siblings. Then at baby Hope, who would grow up in a world where love had already won. "I think Amanda lost her chance to be part of this family when she chose revenge over love. But maybe someday, if she's really changed, there might be room for forgiveness." Just forgiveness? That's all any of us can offer someone who hurt us. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or trusting again. It just means we're not going to let her mistakes poison our happiness anymore. 6 months later, they received Amanda's letter. It was addressed to Maya and Marcus, with instructions not to open it until they were 18. In it, she apologized for the pain she caused and took full responsibility for her actions. She didn't ask for anything, not forgiveness, not contact, not a place in their lives. She just wanted them to know that their father was a good man who had always deserved better than what she'd given him. Nolan and Keisha put the letter in their safety deposit box, along with all the legal documents from their custody battle, the evidence of Amanda's crimes, and the photos from their wedding day. Someday, when Maya and Marcus were adults with children of their own, they might want to understand the full complexity of how their family came to be. But for now, they were simply loved children growing up in a house filled with laughter, security, and parents who had fought the world to be together. And isn't that the best kind of love story? The kind where love doesn't just conquer all. It builds something better than anyone could have imagined. As Nolan tucked Maya and Marcus into bed that night, with baby Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib nearby, and Keisha humming softly in the kitchen while she prepared bottles for the night feedings, he realized this was what happily ever after actually looked like. Not a perfect fairy tale, but a real family built by real people who had chosen love over fear, truth over convenience, and each other over everything else the world had to offer. Some stories end with a wedding. Others end with justice being served or bad people getting what they deserve. But the best stories end with a family sitting around their dinner table, holding hands while they say grace, grateful for the food on their plates and the love in their hearts, and the knowledge that tomorrow will bring more of the same simple, extraordinary happiness they've built together. That's how this story ends. With love winning, families growing, and children sleeping safely in their beds while parents who fought for each other finally get to rest in the peace they earned. And if you're wondering whether it's possible to find love in the middle of deception, hope in the face of betrayal, and family in the ruins of everything you thought you knew about your life, well, just ask the Whitakers. They'll tell you it's not only possible, it's the most beautiful thing that can happen to anyone brave enough to fight for it. Thank you for watching Hidden Truth, Hidden Hearts. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love really can conquer all. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring, true stories. And let us know in the comments, have you ever had to fight for love? What would you do if you discovered a secret that changed everything? Asterisk. Remember, the strongest families aren't the ones that never face challenges. They're the ones that face challenges together and come out stronger on the other side. Asterisk. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love, truth, and second chances. Asterisk.